Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and thank you for tuning in here to the News Night. I'm Deepthi Sachdeva. Now we are talking of the big China's water war warning that is no longer a whisper. It is a loud roar. Now Victor Gao, who's the VP of the Beijing-based Center for China and Globalisation, that's considered almost an appendage of the government, as in a long arm of the government itself, has dropped a chilling bombshell, repeating it thrice, that the threat to India is real, immediate and deliberate now. Is this China avenging the abeyance of the Indus Water Treaty that India decided to do? Why? Because of the Pahalgam attack? Or is this a blackmail? Or is it activating its long game when it comes to the Brahmaputra as a weapon? Remember, there is no treaty, there is no accountability, and there are no masks. There is no pretense. Just a very, very dangerous design that India cannot afford to ignore. And that is the question we are asking. Is India ready? How will India deal with that challenge? And how far is China really going to go? It's a pleasure to introduce Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Sodhi, who's a defense analyst who's written abundantly on the entire issue, and he's just going to join us on the show in a moment. And we will discuss about China, we will discuss about Pakistan, and of course, the response of Delhi. Also on the show, we will break down what really is this concern all about. And if China really does what it is threatening to do, Colonel Saab, what will that entail? But first up, as always, are our straight questions. These are questions that will set the tone of the entire show and questions that we would try to find answers to during the course of this entire debate. Now, let's bring up those straight questions. The first is clear. How real is this China's Brahmaputra threat? Is this real? Is there more to this? How would that even, get orchestrated? This brings us to our second straight question. Is China, ladies and gentlemen, arm twisting India? Because China has done it earlier. Is China wanting to do this again? What is going to be the response from New Delhi? This brings us to our third straight question, but I also want to add to that first question that you just heard, proxy for Pakistan, though it is an open secret that Pakistan, the all-weather friend, and that is how it works. This brings us to our third straight question, China's own game, or this is a revenge for the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty. The fourth straight question now, and that reads, China's Brahmaputra game. Remember, it has been in work for long because there are reports and a lot of these indications keep coming in on how China has been wanting to build dams. And India has flagged a lot of these concerns. We'll also talk about that on the show in just a moment. This brings us to our fifth straight question, and that reads, does China need, in fact, India, remember, is really going to be taking China head on. That is the thinking now that is coming forward as far as different forums really go. And how would that be possible? How will we do that? Clearly, these are questions that we will need answers to. Without wasting time, let me get in Colonel J.S. Sodhi as we will deep dive into that issue and try to explain this also. But first up, Sodhi Saab, in about 30 seconds, I want you to decode what you've heard about this. Could China really be using the Brahmaputra card, and why would it want to do that, sir? 30 seconds before we take our viewers ahead on the show.
Jai Hind, Deepthi. It's my honor to be on your esteemed channel. Well, definitely China means what it says. And China is fully going to use this water bomb. And China has been preparing for this water bomb since 1950 when it annexed Tibet. China's annexation of Tibet was primarily for one reason, that was water. And China knew that to sustain the 90% of its population that stays in eastern China, where all the major cities of China are, it needs water which can come only from Tibet. And after annexing Tibet, China has been making dams at the rate of one dam per 7.5 days. So this threat by Dr. Victor Gao has not to be taken lightly. It has got a deep meaning for India.
All right, I think that's an important beginning to the entire show, and many would say that the worst fear, ladies and gentlemen, is now real because you're talking of Victor Gao. Now, we must tell our viewers that Victor Gao is not a nobody. And that is why when you have this threat coming in from China, what could this entail? What would this mean? Sodhi Saab, with your permission, I want to take our viewers through News Night's deep dive to hit exactly at that issue first up. So what really is this issue all about? Let's bring details here on the big screen to help you understand what this real threat is. Now, this is China's Brahmaputra threat. What could happen? Now, on your screens are also, in fact, details of the flow of the entire river. Where does it move? And remember it because it moves to different countries. You're looking at it having also different names. I will tell you about that in just a moment. But the water diversion risk is the first and the foremost risk. Remember, China is an upper riparian state and you have India at the bottom. So obviously, if the flow gets disrupted, that creates issues. Now, China then can trigger sudden floods or dry spells in India. And the states to get affected are our northeastern states. Remember, you've heard of those sudden floods or drought. That possibly could happen if China decides to do what it is threatening to do. This brings us to our second important point as far as what could this threat entail. And the detail reads that water, remember, is being used as a weapon. Weaponization of water, like they say. Now, this could also entail strategic pressure point as far as India is concerned and a lot of other conversations. Livelihoods are at risk because this could lead to impact when it comes to farming, when it also comes to power and people living downstream. Because when you're living downstream and the flow of water, whether that is less or more, can directly affect those people. And this is why you're looking at the entire threat that is getting decoded, but is this threat real is also what we are discussing. So, Sori Saab, on your screens now are also images of how this story possibly could impact India, and that is why New Delhi is concerned about it, though we haven't seen New Delhi right now raising the hackles. But you think we should be concerned about all this and China is capable of doing this only because of Pakistan?
Well, Deepti, China is fully capable of using water as a bomb and it has been planning this for decades. You see, we have to understand how this entire thing will fan out. Before that, I would like to tell you that on 17th March this year, General Upendra Dwivedi, the Chief of Army Staff of the Indian Army, said that two-front war for India is no longer a possibility. It is a reality. Unquote. All the timelines in public domain are pointing towards a two-front war to be waged jointly by China and Pakistan on India in 2035. This means we are exactly 1 decade away. Just last year, China sanctioned the construction of the Medoc Dam, which is going to be the biggest dam in the world with a capacity of 60,000 megawatts. Now, what does this dam mean? Once this dam is constructed, China will control the entire flow of water into our northeastern states, and how it is going to affect during what time, I would like to explain to the viewers. You see, what is going to happen that whenever this two-front war happens and China releases water from this dam, the northeastern states are going to get flooded. We all know that the Brahmaputra basin, which has an area of 580,000 square kilometers, out of that 33.6% is in India. Now imagine water being released by China, this Brahmaputra basin getting flooded. Now the army, which would be fighting a two-front war, would also have to look after the flood relief because the common citizen would be badly affected. So imagine our army divided on two fronts at the same time looking at the flood rescue and relief. At the same time, since the wars are going to be now in multi-domains where cyber, electromagnetic spectrum and space warfare will be as important as land, sea and air. So we can imagine how precarious the situation is going to be. But not sounding pessimistic, I would like to say that 1 decade is a phenomenally large time. If China can make one dam every 7.5 days since 1950, we have 1 decade. If we plan it well, we execute it well, we can thwart this two-front war challenge, which is just a decade away.
Okay, I think that's a very fair point, sir, that you do make. And, for the interest of our viewers, obviously they would want to know that what is the significance of this river, what really does it bring, because we've spoken about the threat. But I want to take you through a big map graphic to help you really understand the origin of both the Indus water systems and the Brahmaputra. And that is how it moves. This is the blue line that you see. Remember, it moves to the Chemyudong Glacier. It's called the Zangpo River. Then it is called the Brahmaputra River because it has different names when it is in that part of the Tibet, and then it comes down to India. And you will also see the origin almost similarly of the other systems. This is also the Indus River water system with its all tributaries. The Satluj also emanates much from the same portion. And this will also tell you that at some portions, remember, India is the upper riparian state, as in it comes at a height, and then because the water will flow down. And right now, because with Pakistan, remember, we have a treaty that is called the Indus Water Treaty. But with China, if you're wondering, there is no treaty. China does not sign treaties, and that is also a problem. And now when it is threatening to do what it is, in fact, the portion that you see there, the Great Bend, which is now blinking on your screens, is where the conversation today is about a dam that China possibly is constructing. And when it does that, and because if you look at the shape of it, Sodhi Saab, that could be a matter of concern. And a lot of these dams, I was reading about how China really manipulates, because deception is the second name when it both comes to Pakistan and to China. So they will tell you we are doing this for electricity purposes, we will store water. But they don't tell you that this is how exactly dams are being. They create huge spaces where a lot of this water, Sodhi Saab, is also getting stored.
Deepti, definitely whatever China does, though officially it says it is doing for infrastructure development, but there's a latent aim behind that, and the hidden aim is it has got a military purpose. There is no infrastructure which China has built anywhere in part of the world, including the Belt Road Initiative, that doesn't have a military aim hidden in it. So this Medoc Dam also, when constructed, and the rate of construction in China of any infrastructure project is pretty fast by any global standards. So let us assume this dam is even completed in 3 years. In 3 years' time, when this dam is completed, China will be able to regulate the flow of water of Brahmaputra and create chaos whenever it wants to. Now, the Tibetan Plateau, where all the 10 river systems of Asia originate, is an area of 1,000 kilometers by 2,500 kilometers. And since China controls the entire Tibet, it controls all the 10 water systems of Asia, which give water to 2.67 billion people. So apart from the fact that water is needed for drinking, farming, and other reasons, the biggest is how China will use water as a weapon when the balloon goes up, which is the military slang for saying when a war starts. So definitely there is a big military aim behind what China is making this Medoc Dam. It is not limited to infrastructure development only.
I think, again, these are revelations that have come into the public domain, sir, time and again, Sodhi Saab. And you would recall that there are multiple satellite images also, a part of which you see on your screens, which is essentially where the idea is to capture what really is going on as far as the entire LAC is concerned. The Brahmaputra is also concerned. But why is the Brahmaputra crucial? Let me just spend the next 10 seconds talking about it. On your screens is data that will help you understand why possibly China could be wanting to go for such, a method which people say again is a part of the water war. 30% of India's fresh water supply comes from the Brahmaputra. 44% of India's hydropower, again, the capacity is from the Brahmaputra. It is important particularly for India's northeastern states when it comes to farming, when it comes to water, when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to livelihood, fishing, and a lot of other things. But let's go big on the entire issue. We've discussed, and Sodhi Saab spoke about what China can do. Is China capable of this? But what has been happening as far as the last many years is concerned when it comes to the Brahmaputra? Is that really a point of concern when it comes to New Delhi? What has New Delhi done so far? This is China's Brahmaputra dams. Remember, that are already being constructed. Now you're looking at the mega dam in Medoc. That is the point where you will see that blinker right now going on your screens. Now this is Tibet's Great Bend, and this is near India's border, something that we were speaking about just shortly. So these are the dams that are already being constructed. This brings us to a second big dam, and the cost of it is about $137. It obviously generates a lot of power, but the concern is that what if China tries to blackmail or arm twist India using these dams? The other one that you see, the existing dam, is the Zangmu one, which is giving you a power of about 510 megawatts. It has been operational since 2015, and these are again dams coming in very close to that particular area. That is why India has been watching that entire space very closely. The third point that you will see now, another existing dam, is the Dagu one, which is about 640 megawatt. Zhao is about 560 megawatt, and Ziacha is about 320 megawatt. And you see all three of them there, again, not very far from the Brahmaputra. Now, clearly, when you look at this, what is the idea? Why is China wanting to do this? And how has New Delhi responded? I'm sure these are concerns, questions on top of your mind. Now, the existing dams, they are claimed run of the river, as in they tell you that this is just very close to the river. These are called run of the river dams. But storage concerns persist, because if you continue to store water, remember, and the water is not being released as it should be, then clearly, which you have a lower riparian state like India is, in the case of the Brahmaputra, it gets affected, and there could be issues that we've just discussed. Now, what is the geopolitical impact? Why is this significant? What could this lead to? This is our next graphic giving you exactly that particular detail. Now, China controls, remember, 50% of the Brahmaputra's water. It's about 50%. That's almost half of it. And that is why China believes that it can get away by doing what it is doing. Now, you would recall in 2017, when the Doklam face-off really happened, China withheld critical hydrological data. Now, I'll just explain to you what this data is, what is the significance, is because when you have treaties that are being signed between two nations, which are actually sharing water, you sign a treaty so that you can share the data about how much water is flowing, how much is left, how much can be released. But because there is no treaty that you have with China, and also because after the standoff, China used that as an alibi to ensure that there is no data shared. So there is no data, though whether there is another way to monitor this data, monitor water, we'll find out also of that in just a moment. Likewise, what really are the downstream concerns? When you're living downstream, why could this flow of water, if that gets affected, really influence? Remember, India has 30% of fresh water, 44% of the hydropower at risk, is because you will see that entire river when it flows down into India, and it is going downstream where you also have people living. Fresh water and hydropower is something which is majorly at concern. So now let's focus on the response. What has been the response? What is being done? Now, India, remember, is building 10 GW Siang Dam in Arunachal Pradesh, and we will try to show you that also on our screens to help you understand what is India also doing, because clearly these are concerns that have to be kept in mind. Likewise, if you look at this, what is the challenge? Apologies. Now, China says that we don't want to sign any kind of international water treaties. This is the real problem. Because you are not a signatory to a treaty, you are not accountable, there is no negotiation, there is no renegotiation. You don't believe that you can be held accountable. And this is where I want to get in Colonel Sodhi back with us, who's been patiently listening to all this data. Now, sir, we were discussing what is the difference when you talk of the Indus Water Treaty and no treaty with China. The Indus Water Treaty was signed way back. You have seen India wanting to approach Pakistan saying, let's renegotiate it. It's only when you saw what happened in Pahalgam that India said we want to put that treaty in abeyance. But why is China so reluctant to sign any treaty?
Deepti, China has 14 neighbor nations, including India.
Yes.
And China has not signed the water sharing treaty with any of its 14 neighbors. Whereas, like you rightly said, in 1960, India and Pakistan signed the Indus Water Treaty, which got suspended after Pakistan sent its terrorists and they carried out the massacre in Pahalgam on 22nd April this year. So from 1960 to 2025 April, we were following the treaty to the hilt. But China, after annexing Tibet in 1950, despite a lot of international pressure, including pressure by its neighbors, it did not sign any treaty because China knows that in the times ahead, China will be using water as a weapon. In case it would have signed the treaty, then the onus of not breaking the treaty would have been on China, and had it broken the treaty, it would have resulted in a lot of international pressures on China, which it wanted to avoid. So China very conveniently did not sign the water sharing agreement with any of the 14 nations, because we also have to understand, China has got long-term visionary plans. You see, in 1949, Mao Zedong, the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, said that in the times ahead, China should seize the palm and five fingers, which included Tibet as the palm and five fingers, which included Arunachal Pradesh. Now, that was the vision he gave in 1949. And China has worked on that vision slowly, silently, but surely, and it knew in the times ahead, it is going to use water as a big weapon. And we are seeing how it is using water as a weapon. In fact, like you rightly brought out, Deepthi, after the Doklam standoff in 2017, China has not shared any water data with India, though before 2017 it had been doing annually and also when there were incessant rains. So clearly China is now planning something big, whose indication already our Chief of Army Staff General Devedi has given. So definitely in the times to come, China will use water as a big weapon, and that is the reason it has not signed treaty with any of its 40 neighbors.
Situation like this, what is it that the world can do? What is it that India can do? Obviously are questions that I'm going to ask Sodhi Saab next. But before I do that, because the story is not just about China, is Pakistan the real provocation? You know, Sodhi Saab, that's also a lot of our viewers would want to ask. So let's now focus on Pakistan. The men in fact that you see on your screen, Shahbaz Sharif and Asim Munir, again, they need no introduction. But why is there a Pak angle to this China story is what we will decode now. Now, the Indus Water Treaty, like I said, has been put in abeyance, and India has made it very clear that you cannot have water and blood flowing together. So after the suspension, after the abeyance, what really happened? Remember, water cut has hit the Kharif crops. Kharif crops that are again water instead. You don't have enough water right now for those crops, so that season is obviously getting affected, and that is why Pakistan again has been speaking about this. The canals are running dry, particularly in the Sindh and the Punjab province. Again, these are largely agrarian portions where you will see the impact of India and India's big move as far as the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty is also concerned. Power shortage is again a matter of concern because water is getting choked. When you have lesser water, you are not able to generate a lot of hydroelectric power. And that is why you have those quote-unquote literal dark days for Pakistan, quite literally. And not just this, a looming agriculture crisis is something that Pakistan is again dealing with that adds to the economic woes. So this tells you that all is not well in Pakistan. But Sodhi Saab, can Pakistan really complain at a point where India has given umpteen amount of warnings to Pakistan when it comes to terror? Pakistan has done nothing. Plausible deniability is what it plays with. Now, do you believe that this is just the beginning of a lot more problems for Pakistan with the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty?
Well, definitely, Deepthi, Pakistan has found itself in deep trouble because, like you rightly said, for the last 78 years since Pakistan was created and India became independent in 1947, we've had 4 wars with Pakistan. We have divided Pakistan into 2 parts in 1971. Pakistan has been sponsoring terrorism in India for the last 45 years since 1980, when for 15 years it sponsored terrorism in Punjab, and then for the last 36 years in Jammu and Kashmir. And India, on many occasions, has told Pakistan to stop this. We've given a lot of dossiers, a lot of evidence, raised this issue in many international forums, but Pakistan has not changed. So what Pakistan has now bought it is because of its own inaction, because of its own wrong policies, wrong intent, and hence the average Pakistani citizen today is facing the brunt. But here there is another point. You see, till the Pahalgam terror attack did not happen, till India did not suspend the Indus Water Treaty on 23rd April, no Chinese official on record ever spoke of stopping water or using water as a weapon. But after India suspended the Indus Water Treaty on 23rd April, a day after the Pahalgam terror attack, then the Chinese officials started publicly speaking about stopping water or using water as a weapon. And Dr. Victor Gao, in his 3 interviews, which he has given in the last about 1 month, he has made it very clear that water will be used as a weapon by China in case India uses water as a weapon for Pakistan. This is because China and Pakistan are now in a very tight embrace. They are, more than allies. They have very strong bonds, not only economic, but also military bonds. And this is evident since 2021, when the Pakistani army officers started getting posted to the Western Theater Command of China, which is a rare first for a foreign army officers to get posted to another army's headquarters. So ever since then, the embrace between China and Pakistan has deepened only. And after the Pahalgam terror attack, when India suspended the Indus Water Treaty, then the Chinese officials started publicly speaking about China using water as a weapon.
All right, so I'm sure that these are obviously very, very important times, sir. And New Delhi is clearly aware of the dangers that both Pakistan and China can really set. I appreciate Lieutenant Colonel J.S. Sodhi, defense analyst, for his time, his perspective and his valuable insights, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, let's get you Newsnight's parting shot now. Now, the worst fear, ladies and gentlemen, is now real. That China, long seen as a threat number one, has dropped the mask. There is no pretense. Right from the Brahmaputra to the border, India knows this game very well. The water weapon is no myth, it is a looming reality. With China's shadowy moves, often more dangerous than the official ones, the message is loud. That this isn't just posturing when it comes to the Indus Water Treaty. The China-Pak tango is real, and the two-front war now flows through rivers that India cannot afford to ignore. Thank you for watching.